Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, who is the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. Fleur, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Diane.
I'm catching you basically at the 1 week point since this horrible terrorist attack on Israel. And I was struck by a piece that you wrote, a very beautiful piece, basically reflecting on the past 50 years. You went back to your birth, Rosh Hashanah 50 years ago, and how much had changed. How are you feeling about that right now in terms of just the broader opportunities for peace and prosperity, which is what we were talking about 2 weeks ago versus today?
Absolutely. Well, it was quite eerie actually, because the idea was that I turned 50 on Rosh Hashanah, and the piece, as you read, was about the fact that the Yom Kippur War was exactly a week after I was born, and where we were then in the Arab world and where we are now. And the irony of that is that the Yom Kippur War was a surprise war on Israel that almost cost us our country. It was a failure of intelligence. And that whole week, when I wrote that piece, the commentary in Israel was, could the Yom Kippur War happen again? Could Israel have another surprise attack? And the general conclusion was, of course, we could be attacked, but we're very good at intelligence and we've got everything under control. And it's almost saddens me that writing that piece, thinking to myself, well, Yom Kippur War could never happen again. Let's see how we've improved. Let's see what we still need to do. And now we're facing something worse than the Yom Kippur War. And I'll tell you why. Because this is the worst ever attack on civilians in the history of the state of Israel.
Yeah.
The Yom Kippur War mainly killed combatants. That's conventional warfare. This is terrorism and also horrific ISIS-style, Boko Haram, the things that we saw, 15 to 12, 10, 15 years ago in Afghanistan. Daniel Pearl's father wrote a beautiful X tweet, I don't know what to say anymore, about this. These are the people that we have right here on our border.
Yeah, I used to work with Danny Pearl at the Wall Street Journal. That was
Oh,
tragic and felt like the beginning of a whole new era. I mean, one of the you were the first Israeli official to basically go to the UAE after the Abraham Accords were signed and sealed. You've been very much on the front lines of helping to establish these regional ties. Do you feel that's been put on pause, or I mean, because maybe it's too soon to talk about, but what has been the reaction of the Arab neighbors that you speak to?
so that's a good question. And we signed the Abraham Accords in September 2020, right? And in April, May 2021, we had a Gaza war. And I would have, and at that point, because it was the first war after the signing, we were all on tenterhooks. What's going to happen? Are we going to, is this the end? Is this it's like, is it a bump on the road? And I remember at the time, I've made so many deep friendships in the Emirates and in Bahrain and Morocco. My mother's from Morocco, so I already had a pre-existing relationship with Morocco, but particularly in the UAE was new to me. And some friends asked me if I would do a Zoom to talk about the war. This was 2021, because they were getting so much misinformation and their media channels had not changed at all. They were giving the same kind of bias, one-sided.
To acknowledge the new relationships, or was it
exactly
bias?
So no acknowledgement of the warming of the ties. I remember a friend of mine who runs like a news agency here, an Israeli news agency, the only one, had signed, I went with him, had signed an MOU with the WAM, which is the news agency in the UAE. And he said to me, Fleur, they're not answering the phone. What's going on? So we were all very worried at that point that was going to completely derail. It was a short war and it wasn't this. It wasn't the barbarity that we've seen. But it was a bump in the road, but we got over it. And I feel like we've been building up immunity. In other words, yes, unfortunately, as long as you have these crazy fundamentalists funded by Iran, who, by the way, is also the enemy of the sort of the rational Arab countries. UAE is one of them, Bahrain is one of them, Morocco is one of them. They don't like them much either. Then we're going to have these scenes. And in fact, a lot of my very good friends in the UAE are deeply anti-Iran, deeply anti-Islamic fundamentalism, so much so that the UAE has kicked out the entire Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah.
The government of the UAE has kicked everybody out. They don't have this.
Well,
And so they understand us. But in the Arab world, as you know, Dan, there's this kind of rhetoric that we can't be too much in favor of Israel, but we can be neutral. And getting to my point, what I notice is that this time I feel that the coverage has moved towards almost neutral. Wouldn't say neutral, but almost neutral. So it's moving. And this morning, in fact, I had an interview by The National, which wasn't one of the most supportive papers of the Abraham Accords. It was supportive because, of course, the Crown Prince is supportive, but it wasn't the paper that was running to, to embrace us. The Khalid
this
Times,
was
for
in
example,
Saudi Arabia. This was an interview. When you say
national,
this is the national.
Abu
You're the
Dhabi.
Israeli, yeah,
the Abu Dhabi one.
yeah.
So it's baby steps in this region. And even we're going through all of this, and I can't tell you the amount of messages of support, of how are you, how's your family, that I'm getting from the UAE, from Bahrain, and from Morocco. Endless messages. And so that gives me the confidence that it's not lost. Again, it may be a bump on the road. They, believe me, they don't like Hamas much either, but they have this kind of wider, pan-Arab, I guess, loyalty. So I don't think it's going to derail the Abraham Accords. I think it's definitely set back the Saudi peace initiative. And I think that's actually why this is happening.
That was, I mean, a lot of people have said that was a major catalyst or fear about, I mean, one of the things that I think is interesting, it's been very much cast still, obviously, a Hamas Israel conflict, sometimes Palestinian Israel conflict. Do you feel it will remain contained? Because obviously, as you mentioned, Iran has been cited as a player. We've heard about Syria. Could this become a wider regional conflict, or what is the chatter about that?
Well, I think today the Iranian parliament said that they should join in the war. And of course, there's always Syria, but they've been pretty, I think it was very important that President Biden's been amazing. And I think it was very important that he said to them, whoever's even thinking about it, don't. And just in case they didn't hear him, he's sending fleets, And I think that is not just for our morale, but for everybody to understand, don't get over yourselves. You know what I mean? Don't go over what you need or what you want to do. And I think that, they sent now Hamas this afternoon, just sent a rocket to the north from Gaza, which never really happens. Hezbollah's been making noise all week. But I think, I heard a friend of mine who's a journalist say, Hezbollah wants us to talk about the fact that they may start a war with us, but they're not really going to start a war with us. They want to prick us, but they don't really want to. But who knows? Some of these people are not rational actors. So we're at the mercy of crazy genocidal fundamentalists.
I would be remiss, you mentioned Hezbollah, without, of course, mentioning the comments that Donald Trump, who I know has certainly been regarded as a strong supporter of Israel, made earlier this week. How is that playing in Israel? I mean, obviously he's facing a backlash here at home, and a lot of rebukes for what he said about Hezbollah being very smart, other comments he made. Do you think that's being misinterpreted I'm curious to get your views.
Well, it's a shame that he's taken this route, because he's really ruining his legacy as the guy who started the Abraham Accords. You've got to give him the credit for that.
Yeah.
And what's he do? I don't understand what he has to gain from this rhetoric, but Trump has always been unfiltered.
Yes.
So I'm just grateful that President Biden has, expressed his unequivocal support. Blinken has been here. He met with the victims. He's met with the families of the hostages. One of my friends, unfortunately, Hassan, is a hostage. They're American. They're American citizens. And Blinken met with them. And I'm praying, Diane, praying that we somehow get the hostages out, make a deal, whatever deal is needed. We need to get those 150 innocent people who, the women, the reports we're getting of serial rape of the women, it's just, and the kids in cages.
Well, and the horrific pictures that came out from Prime Minister Netanyahu's office, I mean, was that necessary to really sort of as a reminder to people? I mean, again, I don't know, you're not him, of course, and I don't know if you were part of that decision, but why was that important right now?
I think it's an anticipation. The Palestinians have built for themselves a very impressive PR machine that's got even the smartest people fooled. And we've even seen, scenes that they've kind of curated, like people on a stretcher, and then they just roll over and get up and walk away. Not to say that there aren't casualties, real casualties and civilian casualties. And believe me, there's not one mother in Israel that wants to see any child, whether Palestinian or Israeli, hurt. That's not our MO. We don't want to see innocent civilians. They come to get our innocent civilians. We do everything to avoid. We go door to door, endangering our young men, our soldiers, so that we don't flatten a building and kill innocent civilians. That's who we are, and that's who they are.
You're also deputy mayor. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that to the Netanyahu question, I think people didn't really, because we're sensitive about our images, because we believe in the dignity of victims and the dead, I think it was important to show people the carnage, people to understand the scale, because the scenes and the stories, and I don't like to exaggerate about the Holocaust.
No, it's
I'm
horrific.
one of those people who brings the Holocaust into everything. I'm really not. But they are, when you hear the stories of a child hiding in a closet for 14 hours whilst his parents were getting killed and he was mum because he knew that was his life at stake. These are Holocaust stories.
Yeah.
And the kids in a concert being shot in the back. My daughter, my 17-year-old daughter, just went to the funeral of a boy who was in a bunker running away from this party with a bunch of kids, and they started throwing grenades into the bunker. And to save everyone, he started catching the grenades and throwing them back and catching them. And one of the grenades, of course, killed him. But look at the heroism. But these are the stories. These are the cruel stories of a horrible, brutal massacre. And I think that Netanyahu was trying to show the world, these are the people that you want us to make peace with. These are the people you want us to sit and negotiate with, or these are the people you want us to leave alone and not dismantle their infrastructure. These are the monsters. And I think it was important to show that.
I've heard a lot of comparisons, especially early on, to 9/11, and much like you talk about 50 years, since, the last major tragedy there. I know there've been many since. There's been 22 years since 9/11 happened. And in that time, of course, we've learned a lot of lessons about what the US did right and also, did wrong in response to that tragedy on our soil. Are there some of the lessons or I mean, is it a fair comparison, the 9/11? It certainly captures the scope and the surprise nature of the attack.
Yes,
I don't know if it's helpful in terms of framing what comes next.
Well, 9/11 didn't have hostages. It had 3,000 dead. And if we compare the dead that we've had in American proportional numbers, it would have been 26,000 dead.
Sure, of course.
Somebody did the math. And there were no hostages. So this wound is still very much bleeding for us right now because of the hostages. And because that complicates the attack, the retaliation, the dismantlement of that regime, was not just holding our people hostage, it's holding half of their people hostage. Half the people support them and half the people don't. They're miserable. And I feel for those people. You think that it doesn't hurt us to see images of innocent civilians getting affected in war?
It's
We
hard to
we didn't
extricate,
ask for
isn't it?
this.
I
Hmm?
mean, Hamas is so, I think some of the questions have been, does the absolute destruction of Hamas, what does that mean for Gaza, given how difficult it's been to really target the terrorist communities there? I mean, you are the deputy mayor of a holy city that has, I believe, 40% Arab
40%?
Israeli population. What has been your message to them? Because I'm sure there must be some concerns as well as some empathy for the losses in that community too.
Well, yes, absolutely. And you know how many Palestinians, even very high-profile Palestinians, have come out with posts saying, "Not in my name." Many, many, more than I expected, actually.
Hmm.
Um, the Arabs in East Jerusalem, for the most part, are peace-loving people who just want to do a good day's work, go home, feed their families. We work together, we live together. Day after the attack, I went to the supermarket. My butcher is an Arab guy, lovely guy. I love him. It was not awkward between us because we both feel the same way. Who are these madmen who are doing this? He feels the same way as I do. Um, and so, for the most part, those are the Arabs in East Jerusalem. But we also know that we have some radicals in Hamas sleeper cells. There are certain neighborhoods, actually, that have a big Hamas presence. And we're worried about them. And so the mayor, first off the bat, he bolstered the patrols, police, security, especially in the neighborhoods on the seam between East and West Jerusalem. And so far, thank God. Well, last night actually there was a shooting at a police station, and a policeman got shot, and he's he's very badly injured. So we pray that
Was
he gets
this by a Hamas? I mean, do you know who?
well. We didn't ask him for his affiliation card, but it's either Hamas or one of these crazy radicals.
Well, there's certainly been the diaspora. You've seen a move to come back and help in the fight. Is that welcomed, or is that add another layer of chaos?
Well, I feel the country this week is very chaotic. I think we're reeling from this thing, and
Of course, it's an
it's chaotic,
unprecedented
like
tragedy.
it
I was in
was
New York
after
during
9/11.
9/11.
Exactly, in that sense, it's like 9/11 is like, what happened here?
Stunned.
So there's a lot of Israelis who don't live in Israel, many, and who are still doing active reserve duty. And a lot of them have come back. In fact, I've got friends who've spent the whole week chartering planes. Even the State Department chartered planes to take Americans back, but friends of mine chartered planes to bring soldiers back. We've had donations from people paying for soldiers to come back. Understand that almost every one of our wars is existential. And even though we're strong and the country is not in danger of disappearing like it was in 67, like it was even in 73, we're not there in that sense. But the barbarism of what happened, the barbarity here, has really touched everybody, and political affiliation does not matter anymore. And it
Yeah.
seems so stupid that a week ago we were fighting horrible, visceral arguments about whether, excuse me, about whether a Jewish prayer service, was going to have a separation between men and women or not. Hardcore liberals, no. The religious, yes, this is our tradition. This is what we were fighting about a week
It puts
ago.
it all in perspective, doesn't it? Let me ask,
Different.
what's on your radar? I mean, I'd love, obviously, this is a conversation that's continuing, and I appreciate your generosity in speaking to us. I know everybody wants some of your time. I do think, both in terms of the rhetoric that you're seeing, in the media, but also those wider geopolitical consequences at this point. What is on your radar, Fleur, that you would put on ours?
Well, like I said at the beginning, Hamas is the representation of something that threatens the whole of the free world. We're the first stop on the tour. Iran has very expansionist ambitions. They say it. They say they want a caliphate in the entire planet. It's not, so I read something very smart that somebody said once, I can't remember who it was. When people keep telling you they want to kill you, you should actually believe them. And so I think that there's in America, in the Western world, there's this kind of like, first of all, it's far, right? So you don't think it's ever going to come to you, but it did come to you. It came right to the heart of you. And that hasn't gone away. And this is the same thing. It's another iteration of the what you had, the tragedy you had in 9/11. Ironically, I was at the 9/11 memorial. We have the largest 9/11 memorial with all the names outside of the America here in Jerusalem. And I was sitting there with your ambassador at the 9/11 memorial. When was it? Less than a month ago. A month ago. Exactly a month ago. And so this is the same thing. And it came to you, and it came in that terrible way. But if Iran manages to, and this is why Saudi want a pact with the United States. They're right. We need protection, because ultimately this is going to come to you. So this region is kind of the stopping these crazy radicals. This is a civilizational war. People are constantly asking me, well, what about the innocent citizens of Gaza? And I really, as a mother, I've got 4 children. No, I speak for all the mothers in this country. There's not one mother who would celebrate the death of a Palestinian child the way that the other side does. But put that aside for a second. I'm sure that when the Allies fought the Second World War and the British carpet bombed Dresden, that essentially turned the war around, I'm sure there were a lot of innocent Germans who also died.
Interesting. The battle. Go ahead.
What I'm saying is that it might sound hyperbolic, but this, to me anyway, is definitely a civilizational clash. And we all know what side you and I are on. And we all know what side Iran and Syria and Qatar to an extent, and Hamas and Hezbollah and Boko Haram and ISIS and the extremists in Afghanistan and what they're doing there. We all know what side they're on. And so this is bigger than us. And so you have to bear with us until we actually get the job done, and not start pressurizing Israel to stop and leave the job halfway, because it's going to come back.
I know it's hard to predict. You've said in the past it will be a long conflict. Are you feeling any differently about that now from a week ago? Probably 6 days ago after the attack. It does appear from here that Israel is making significant inroads into Gaza. I don't know if that means success, frankly.
I don't even know what success looks like at this point, to be honest. No winners here. But we need to uproot the terrorist infrastructure.
Yeah.
We need to uproot the terrorist infrastructure.
Yeah.
And I pray, and a lot of this is brought on, I'll tell you, by the terrible education system that the whole world has funded. The Palestinians, and I'll say this in the generally, the Palestinians, the world has taken all agency away from the Palestinians by treating them like they shouldn't be accountable for themselves or responsible for themselves. It's been 75 years. And for 100 years, they knew that we were building a state. Of course, you know the story. They were offered a state. They said no. They kept saying no. They keep playing double or nothing and losing because they ideologically have not accepted that we're here. And
it's just the Palestinian people, you mean, as opposed to
well, no, it's the lies that the leaders are telling their people, and it's in their educational system and it's in their media. The whole thing is all about the right of return, which means the end of the state of Israel. So they keep promising their people, just hang on in there. One day we're going to kick all the Jews out. We're going to throw them to the sea. They're very specific. Throw them all to the sea. And we're going to take everything back. That's the rhetoric. It's in schools. It's in the media. And part of the Oslo Accords was removing incitement from the school curriculum and from the media, etc. They haven't done it. But UNRWA runs the majority of the schools. in
Mm.
Gaza, in the Palestinian Authority. And UNRWA is funded by the entire world. And I'm not saying stop funding schools. I'm saying make your funding conditional on the change of that curriculum from a curriculum of hatred to a curriculum of peace. Or even take out the hatred. Forget peace, just take out the hatred. And, you know, I'll say something for Trump. He removed the funding for UNRWA specifically because of this and pay to slay, the Taylor Force Act that you guys passed, because of your citizen that got killed, and the killer still getting a pension. Why is everybody giving the Palestinians money to pay pensions to kill Jews and to indoctrinate their children to hate and kill us? Why is the world supporting this? I said once to the British consul, who's very, very anti-Israel, I said to him, you know when we're going to have peace? I said, when you all leave.
The British consul to Israel is anti-Israel?
To Jerusalem, not the
To
embassy.
Jerusalem, forgive me.
The last one.
What an odd person to have in that role.
Yes, because he sees himself as Jerusalem, West Bank, and Gaza, rather than, you know, the rest of the Jewish state of Israel. And I said to him, the day you all leave and stop funding the Palestinian Authority and Hamas and everybody and humanitarian aid, and I know everybody does this from a good place, but the day they realize that they've got no other option, the day you stop propping them up this tree where they don't accept our existence, that is the day we will have peace with the Palestinians.
Let me end. I'm thinking about one other lesson, since we're talking about war. There is the aftermath of World War I and the sort of punitive approach to Germany, which, you know, many would argue created the condition. Yeah, versus investing in Japan. Is that a lesson that, is it too early to be thinking about that? I certainly think there's a lot of misconceptions about Gaza and about the relationship that Israel has had with the people who live there. Again, I don't want to start on, you know, predicting too much. You're in the middle of this devastating conflict and our hearts go out to everybody involved. But anything else that you would think about in terms of conditions for what comes next?
Well, let me end with sort of some hope. I know a lot of young Palestinian peace activists that want to change life for their people. And they understand that we're not their enemy, that their enemy is the fear we have of them, because they've, you know, very justified fear. They tried to destroy the country 4 times. We've had 2 intifadas. We've had rockets from Gaza. They have to, first of all, these young peace activists that I know and business people, who I bring into my Abraham Accords work, by the way, because I think they're an important component. These people have accepted that Israel's not going anywhere. And therefore, the only thing that's left to do is to find a peaceful resolution, how we can work together and how we could be the best neighbors. We could be a superpower together. They've figured it out. Unfortunately, they are the young generation, the ones who've had, I don't know what to call it, enlightened moments, or they've met somebody who's changed their lives, or read Gandhi or something. These are the guys and the women that I speak to. And so there is hope that there can be a new generation. But I think we have to take a much more holistic approach to the Palestinian problem and not keep kind of putting a Band-Aid on the wound and really clearing it out and try and nurture the leaders that can bring a new era of prosperity and peace to their people. They're miserable and they deserve better leaders. I've met some of those leaders. I just pray that they get the political standing, the political jobs, the political popularity to be able to lead their people to a new era.
Well, Fleur, I know you have been on the front lines of trying to, an architect for that era of prosperity, stability, peace. I hope that we return to that. And obviously this is an ongoing conversation. I really appreciate you joining us. And again, our hearts go out to the people of Israel and everybody involved.
Thank you so much, Diane. Thank you.
Thank you.